Today in the Middle East, there are two countries that have been enemies for decades. One is Iran, the other is Israel. Their rivalry is so intense that many global experts believe if a major war ever starts in the region, it could begin between these two nations. But an important question remains. Why did Iran and Israel become enemies in the first place? Because it wasn't always like this. Decades ago, the relationship between Iran and Israel was very different. In fact, before the late 1970s, Iran was one of the few countries in the Middle East that quietly maintained contact with Israel. But everything changed in 1979. That year, a massive political event shook Iran and transformed the entire country. It is known as the Iranian Revolution. After the revolution, Iran's government completely changed. A new leadership came to power and established the Islamic Republic. Soon after taking power, the new Iranian leadership openly declared that Israel was their enemy. They refused to recognize Israel as a legitimate state and strongly opposed its presence in the Middle East. For Israel, this was a serious threat, because Iran didn't just make political statements. Over time, Iran began supporting groups in the region that were actively fighting against Israel. From that moment on, the relationship between the two countries collapsed. But instead of a direct war between their armies, something different began to happen. A shadow conflict, secret intelligence operations, cyber attacks, covert military actions. For years, many of these events happened quietly, far from public attention. But behind the scenes, the tension continued to grow. And eventually, one issue became the center of global concern. Israel believed that Iran was moving closer to developing powerful nuclear capabilities. If that ever happened, Israeli leaders feared it could threaten the very existence of their country. This fear triggered a new phase in the conflict, a phase where the battle would not begin with tanks or fighter jets. There would be no bombs falling from the sky. Instead, a different kind of weapon would be used, a weapon that no one could see. The fear didn't start overnight. For years, the world had been watching Iran's nuclear program grow quietly in the background. Iran claimed that its program was peaceful, meant for energy, research, and development. But not everyone believed that. Countries like the United States and Israel began to suspect something else. They believed Iran could be working towards something far more dangerous. A nuclear weapon. At first, these concerns stayed mostly in the world of intelligence reports and private discussions. Evidence began to surface. Satellite images showed new facilities being built deep underground. Hidden enrichment sites, heavy security zones in remote areas. One name started appearing again and again. Natanz, a heavily protected nuclear facility in Iran, built partly underground, designed in a way that made it extremely difficult. For Israel, this was a serious problem. Because if Iran was truly developing nuclear capabilities, then time was running out. The deeper and more protected these facilities became, the harder it would be inside to stop. Israel's intelligence community, the situation was becoming Meetings were held behind closed doors. Military leaders, cyber experts, and intelligence officers all faced the same question. How do you stop something you can't reach? A direct military strike was one option, but it came with massive risks. Airstrikes could trigger a full-scale war across the Middle East. Missiles could lead to retaliation from multiple sides. The cost could be devastating, not just for Israel, but for the entire region. So they needed something else, something smarter, something quieter, something that could reach deep inside Iran without crossing the border. At the same time, Iran continued its work. Centrifuges were spinning day and night. Machines designed to enrich uranium at high speed. From the outside, everything looked normal. The systems were running perfectly. No alarms, no failures, no signs of interference. But what no one inside the facility knew was that the real attack had already begun. Not from the sky, not from the ground, but from within. Somewhere hidden inside the system, something had entered, something invisible. And once it started, by the time Iran's nuclear facilities were fully operational, the plan to stop them had already moved into its most dangerous phase. This was no longer just intelligence gathering. This was execution. But unlike traditional military operations, there would be no soldiers crossing borders, no jets in the sky, no missiles on radar. Instead, the battlefield was something far more invisible: code. Somewhere, far from Iran, a team of highly trained experts had been working in complete secrecy. Cyber specialists, intelligence officers, engineers. Their mission was simple in words, but nearly impossible in reality: break into one of the most secure systems in the world, Iran's nuclear facilities, especially Natanz, were not connected to the internet. They were isolated, air-gapped. That meant no direct remote access, no easy entry. So the question was, how do you attack a system that isn't even online? The answer required patience and precision. The operation began with a silent infiltration. Not through networks, but through people. At some point, without anyone realizing it, an infected device made its way inside the facility. A simple USB drive. Small, ordinary, harmless, at least on the outside. But inside it was something engineered to perfection. A highly advanced piece of malicious code. It didn't activate immediately. It waited. It observed. It learned the system it had entered. Every machine, every command, every pattern. And then once it understood everything, it began to act. The code moved silently through the internal network, spreading from one system to another. Undetected, unnoticed. Security systems saw nothing unusual. Operators saw no warning signs. Everything looked normal. But behind the scenes, something had changed. The target wasn't just the computers. It was the machines connected to them. The centrifuges. These were the heart of Iran's nuclear program. Delicate machines that had to spin at precise speeds to function correctly. Even a small disruption could damage them. And that's exactly what the code was designed to do. It began to take control. Carefully, slowly. At first, it caused tiny changes, too small for anyone to notice. Speed adjustments, timing shifts. Then it did something even more dangerous. It lied to the system. While the centrifuges were being pushed beyond safe limits, the monitoring screens continued to show everything as normal. Perfect readings, stable performance, no errors. Inside the control room, engineers saw nothing wrong. But deep inside the facility, the machines were starting to break, one by one, silently, without explosions, without alarms, just failure. The operation was working, and Iran had no idea that their own system. At first, the failures didn't make sense. Inside the Natanz facility, engineers began noticing something strange. Centrifuges, machines built with extreme precision, were breaking down one after another. Some spun too fast. Some suddenly slowed down. Others shut off without any clear reason. But every time they checked the system, everything looked normal. No alarms, no error messages, no clear explanation. It didn't add up. These machines were designed to run perfectly under controlled conditions. Random failures like this weren't supposed to happen. Yet the damage kept increasing. More centrifuges failed. More systems started behaving unpredictably. Confusion spread across the facility. Engineers ran test after test. They replaced parts. They checked power supply. They reviewed system logs. Still nothing. Because what they were seeing on their screens wasn't the truth. Behind the scenes, the malicious code was still running. Carefully. Precisely. It would let the machines operate normally for a while, then suddenly change their speed, push them beyond safe limits, then bring them back to normal again, over and over, just enough to slowly destroy them, without being noticed immediately. And at the same time, it fed false information back to the monitoring systems. So when engineers looked at the data, everything seemed stable, everything seemed fine, until it wasn't. Then came the moment everything changed. Dozens of centrifuges failed almost at once. The scale of the damage could no longer be ignored. Now it was clear this was not a technical problem. This was an attack. A silent, invisible attack that had been inside the system for a long time. Iran's nuclear program was being disrupted from within, without a single bomb being dropped, without a single soldier entering the facility. The realization hit hard. This was something new, a different kind of warfare, one where the battlefield wasn't land, sea, or air, it was code. And by the time they understood what was happening, by the time the attack was fully understood, the damage had already changed everything. Inside the Natanz facility, hundreds of centrifuges had failed. Months, maybe even years of work had been set back. And the most shocking part? No missiles, no explosions, no visible enemy. Just code, invisible, silent, and devastating. Iran immediately launched a full investigation. Top engineers, cyber experts, and security teams were brought in. They searched every system, every line of code, every possible weakness, and finally, they found it. A highly advanced piece of malware hidden deep inside the control systems. It wasn't random. It wasn't simple. It was designed with extreme precision, built to target one thing, and one thing only: the centrifuges. This was not the work of a normal hacker. This required massive resources, deep intelligence knowledge, and access to highly classified information, which meant only a few countries in the world were capable of creating something like this. Soon, cybersecurity experts around the world started analyzing the attack. And that's when the name became public. Stuxnet cyber attack. For the first time in history, a cyber weapon had caused physical destruction on this scale. It proved something the world had never seen before. A war could be fought without bullets. The global reaction was immediate. Governments realized that if one system could be attacked like this, then any system could be vulnerable. Power grids, airports, military systems, everything connected to technology was now a potential target. A new kind of warfare had officially begun. Cyber warfare. As for Iran, they rebuilt. Stronger security, better protection, more hidden systems. But the lesson remained. Even the most protected facility in the world can be reached. And for Israel, nothing was officially confirmed. No public admission, no direct statement. Just silence, the kind of silence that leaves more questions than answers. Years later, this operation is still studied by military experts and cybersecurity professionals. Not just because of what it destroyed, but because of how it changed the future of war forever. This wasn't just an attack. It was a message, a warning to the world that the next war might not begin with soldiers,